everyone. Welcome. This is Ashley with Sky House Apothecary and Herbs, and I'm here with Rukmini Walker today. Thank you, Rukmini, for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
And today is a special day because we're doing a live cast. So we are opening up the space to anyone who wants to pop in and ask questions or just listen. And this is the final kind of culmination of our Heart of the Sacred Feminine series that we've been doing for the last, I guess, 4 or 5 months now.
Yeah, it's been really a beautiful journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So today we're going to just kind of reflect back on the topics that we've covered. We've compiled a number of questions from our listeners, from different sources where they've listened to these by podcast or on YouTube. And then we'll also open it up to questions live from any of you that have them. But before we open the space officially, Rukmini, would you offer some prayers into this space before we begin?
Sure. These are prayers of blessing to help us all hear more deeply and be able to receive blessings. Om Agyanatimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Namane Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangolam Gayate Girim Yatkripas Vande Shri Gurun Dinataranam Vanchakapatarubhyascha Kripasindhu Vaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavindam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Thank you all so much. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Rukmini. So before we dive into our discussion, after this beautiful prayer sort of setting in and creating the tone, I just want to really say that this is a space where I hope people can express their ideals, their concerns, their questions, their hopes, because, I think one of the real goals that Rukmini and I were hoping for in this series was really to create an opening for discussion and dialogue around the divine feminine. And this is really at the cornerstone of Rukmini's work, founding Urban Devi. So for those of you who are not familiar with Urban Devi, I do want to say a little bit about this because this is a wonderful resource if you're new to the community. So Urban Devi is based out of the Bhakti Center in New York City and is a place where women are gathering together to talk about contemporary Bhakti yoga practice and, just really kind of see into the future of Bhakti yoga here in the West.
Yeah, it's been on Zoom for quite a while since, all through COVID. So originally out of the Bhakti Center in New York, but now people are joining. It's interesting that it's now become an international community, people joining from all over the world, women joining.
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah. And so if you're interested in learning more, you can go to urbandavy.com and I'll include a link in the chat box. And if you'd like to join the group, I'll also post my email. So you can just email me and then I'll get you linked up with the group. Okay. Thank you, Andrea, for posting that. So that's now in the chat box for you all. So let's open up the space now. Really, like I said, we really have been exploring over these last several months the perspective from the angle of the divine feminine. And I think sometimes I was just talking with a friend about this, that sometimes when we talk about the feminine, it can be a little confusing. Oh, there's my dog, sorry. It can be a little confusing between, what is the divine feminine and then what is the more mundane feminine. And so we kind of teased this out a little bit and looking at how do we, look at the feminine and spiritualize it. And we've talked about truth and beauty and how we look at beauty and how truth and beauty are, as you pointed out, kindred spirits. We took a look at the role of the goddess. We explored the practices, what are the practices that we can do in our daily lives to bring us closer to this divine feminine in our bhakti or in our yoga practices. And we looked at the dance of intimacy between Krishna and Radha and what is the role of the feminine in that dance of intimacy. And then we closed with a really beautiful discussion of Lord Chaitanya and his embodiment of the devotion of the love of Radharani for Krishna. And that was one of my favorites, just because of the way that you were able to describe Lord Chaitanya in this mood of Radha. So if you want to listen to those, I'll post a link, but those are all found on the Sky House Herbs YouTube channel. So if there's any questions that you have around any of those subjects, you can raise your hand. You can also type them into the chat box. And I think we'll start off with a question from the YouTube comments just to get us started, and then as your questions start to maybe bubble up, you can share those with us. How does that sound, Rukmini?
Sounds fine. Thank you so much.
And is there anything you want to add about the series, like any parts that maybe stood out to you or any of your favorite pieces?
Well, I was just thinking while you were speaking that the fact is, whether we're men or women, that kind of dominating, controlling ego is what needs to be given up. And that's very much a part of the path of bhakti. Bhakti is, it's receptive, and it's a descending path. And it's all about that softness, that humility, the empathy, the compassion. So, we think of those as feminine qualities. Sometimes we see that in a man as well, a very highly evolved man. And sometimes, not all women who have power are using it in a sacred or divine way. So I think that's important to point out also.
Beautiful. Thank you. So we'll start at the very beginning of our series. So the first talk we did was an introduction to Bhakti Yoga and the goddess. And there was a question from Katerina. She said, I can't tell you how much I needed this today. What a special gift you've shared with us. I held on to every single word, this beautiful conversation, and just let it sink deep inside my heart. We need more of this in our lives, and I appreciate you for knowing it. How might we bring more of this awareness of the sacred feminine into our daily lives? Are there other examples or other ideas that you might have to share?
Beautiful question, Katerina. I was thinking that, we all have those different voices within us, and this mood of bhakti is sometimes defined as an offering of the heart or a softening of the heart. It's a receptivity to our source, seeing the connectivity of all living beings, the same as me in my pains and my pleasures. We're all the same. And the idea that the same individual eternal soul is present in carrying God as the super soul within the heart. I also love this definition of bhakti, which sounds very feminine to me, that bhakti is meditation, or the Sanskrit word would be upasana, that's been saturated with love or priti. So I love that definition of bhakti. So she's asking, how do we do this? How do we do this in our daily lives? So I was thinking of the different practices of bhakti. The sadhana there are several things that start with an S, right? So sadhana is a daily practice that we can each have. And bhakti is like a cultivation of a garden in the heart. The seeds of bhakti they're like heirloom seeds that come down from holy teachers from the present and from the past. So those seeds can't just be, sort of thrown onto hard ground, but they have that ground. There has to be a foundation. There has to be like an aerating of the soil and a fertilizing of the soil of the heart for those bhakti seeds to grow. So how do we do that? How does that happen? Well, that happens by, just like in a garden. I was thinking of you, Ashley, that you're a gardener and you have a garden in your yard. So this bhakti is like creating a garden in the yard of the heart, in that deepest place in the heart, and creating that. The idea of sadhana, or daily practice, is fertilizing that soil, creating a foundation, and just like a garden, that we can't, just go away for a week and expect, without any water and without any care, that garden is gonna sustain. So there has to be daily watering, with like the watering process, the chanting of the holy names, the chanting and hearing. There has to be good sun, and which you could compare to holy sangha, and grace, like rain clouds coming down. So having that daily practice, is so important. In a garden, there's so many weeds, that can grow up. So what are the weeds? Looking for pride, may be a weed, or arrogance, or looking for taking some credit for myself. These might be considered weeds on the path of bhakti. But I was also thinking something that's important on, in cultivating a garden is complementary plantings. I think I learned this from my sister Susan, that when you plant clematis, which is a beautiful flowering vine that needs sun, it needs shade at its roots. So there's a low-growing lady's mantle that has these big, broad leaves that can cover the roots of the clematis, and the two of them grow as friends. So yeah, just that idea of like-minded sangha, or like-minded friendship, is so important to the garden, because the garden can so easily be trampled by, people who aren't in the same mood, mood of spiritual cultivation. So that sadhana, the holy sangha. So now moving into, sadhu sangha is like that complementary plantings, holy sangha, and seva, offering the gifts, whatever gifts that I've been given in service. So someone asked a question about, well, what makes it seva? Is it about intention, and is it about gratitude alone? And I think those two components are really important. In addition to that, it has to be directed to our source. That this is gratitude to the source of my life, gratitude to the source of everything, and offering it back. Bhakti is all about this process of offering back. So just some thoughts on sadhana, or daily practice, having like-minded association that inspires us on the path, and then doing something, whatever my natural tendencies, my unique gifts, offering those unique gifts, So a few thoughts on some practices of bhakti that are helpful.
I love that. And of course, I love the analogy of the garden. And it's so helpful to think about that and how, what are the things the plants need? And all of those things just are such beautiful examples. Yeah. And I was thinking too, as you were speaking, when we draw in that feminine aspect, this kind of ties into the third talk we did on beauty and truth. But, the path of bhakti is also about adornment. And it's about beauty. So it's, it's not just offering a rock. It's like we offer, rocks can be beautiful, but, offering flowers and seashells and food that you've really made with your heart and with flavors that are just right. So, I think that attentiveness to those details, which I think women are just very good at that. They're very good at noticing those small details that make something beautiful.
Yeah, these are all such feminine aspects of bhakti that I think are so important, because really bhakti is meant to be, there's a Sanskrit word bhava, which means the awakened emotions of the heart. So bhakti means to not just dwell in the headspace. Knowledge is helpful, renunciation is helpful, but sometimes they can even be harmful. When if I go to a place of pride that, I have so much knowledge, and I'm such a renounced person. So these can be detrimental on the path of bhakti. So bhakti really is about going to this awakened emotions of the heart, the bhava of the heart, and offering the heart in that reciprocal love to Radha and Krishna, the divine masculine, the divine feminine. So happy to see Pranita is here. She's the author of this beautiful book that we want to show and showcase her beautiful offerings. So.
Yes, welcome, Pranita. So good to see you. So maybe we can actually go to that question. That was from, from talk 3. So we'll jump to talk 3, the dance of intimacy. And this was Paola or Andrea had a question. Here's what she posted. She said, Hare Krishna, Rukmini and Ashley Prabhus. Love the sweet nectarian conversation. Would love to know more about the poem read at the end. Could you share more about this poem, its source, and how we might be able to absorb more from listening to it?
Yeah, this is a beautiful poem that Paula Andrea is asking about. And it's from Bhaktivinoda Thakur, from a collection of songs that he wrote called, he was such a prolific writer and poet, and he wrote many songs. And so this one particular collection is called Gita Mala, which means a garland of songs. And in this song, he's talking about, I'm gonna read the whole song because it's so beautiful, just the English, of course. But it's really talking about kind of drinking the holy name like a type of ambrosia, and he's speaking to his tongue. So yeah, let me read the verses of this beautiful song. Oh, my tongue, you who are overwhelmed with the desire for tasting material enjoyment, please hear my instructions. Always remain deeply absorbed in drinking the nectarian, loving mellows of the beautiful names of the divine couple, Radha and Krishna. The name of Radhika is ever fresh and lovely and is pure ambrosia. It is very sweet, utterly enchanting, and is the abode of complete satisfaction. With great care, you should eagerly blend this ambrosial name of Radhika with the wonderful sweet condensed milk of the name of Krishna. Now add into that mixture the sweet fragrance of loving affection, which is both cool and delightful. Drink that nectar day and night, and you will know what true happiness is. So these are all instructions to the tongue, right? No longer will there remain on the tongue a thirst for mundane tastes, for these wonderful transcendental mellows will fulfill all of your desires. At the lotus feet of Raghunath Das Goswami, Bhaktivinoda begs for ecstatic rapture in hearing and chanting the divine names of Radha and Krishna. So it's interesting, it's said on the path of bhakti that devotional service or bhakti begins with the tongue. So it sounds kind of strange, but when you think about it, what are the functions of our tongue? Well, tasting delicious dishes, and then or drinks, different kinds of drinks that we might like, and then also speaking, right? So on the path of bhakti, we have to transform those functions or those activities of the tongue to sort of approach this ambrosial nectar of the sweet names of Radha and Krishna, and hearing their pastimes, chanting their names, hearing their pastimes. So it's a matter of saying yes to these new tastes, and saying no to some old tastes, maybe some old lower tastes. So, we hear so much about the higher self, the lower self, the shadow self. So sometimes it's a matter of saying no to the things the tongue is wanting to taste that maybe I had so much affection for yesterday or last year. I'm trying to awaken a taste for the higher taste for the ambrosial nectar of Radha and Krishna's names and pastimes.
I love that. And yeah, the description is so, it was like making me thirsty. and a really interesting thing about something that I've learned as an herbalist who works in nutrition as well, is that when you're chronically dehydrated, you lose your thirst. But once you become hydrated, you become thirsty again. So a lot of people who are dehydrated don't even realize they are. They just think they're not thirsty, but that's actually a sign of dehydration. And so if we apply that to the spiritual,
absolutely, yeah. Apply that, take it all the way to the nth degree to the spiritual, that we are thirsty, we are famished in this world. And we've been drinking so many beverages, right, that just don't quite satisfy that thirst. And it's almost like, actually, one great Vaishnava poet talked about how in a desert, just a few drops of water, there may be water in the desert, but it has to be an ocean of water to satisfy someone's thirst, or a reservoir of water, an oasis of water to satisfy our famished thirst. And I think that's really the case, that we go through this world and we can't quite figure out why it's not working, but it's said that there's this God-sized hole, to switch metaphors here. There's this God-sized hole in our hearts, and we're trying to fill it up, or trying to fill that thirst with so many different beverages or addictions or intoxications or shopping or this and that and the other thing. But that the person that we're seeking, or the sweet taste we're seeking, is those sweet pastimes, the sweet persons of the divine feminine, Radharani, the divine masculine, Shri Krishna.
Beautiful. So. Oh, yeah, a God-sized hole in the heart. Perfect.
Keep trying to pour those different things in there, right?
It doesn't work.
It just doesn't work, right? Yeah, and we think, I think so often we think, well, it seems to be working for everyone else, but it's just not working for me. So therefore I can become depressed, or I can become, have some kind of dysfunction in my life. But the fact is, it's kind of fake news and false propaganda that it's working for everyone but me, because the fact is we're all longing for that higher taste, that to fill that hole in our hearts and to quench that thirst. Yeah. And there's another nice example, if I can share, that about the musk deer, that this musk deer is a male deer that has a gland within him, within his navel, I think, that excretes this gorgeous fragrance. And he's searching all through the forest looking for that fragrance, but he doesn't realize that it's coming from within him, his own self. So that's what, we climb every mountain, ford every stream, but we don't look within ourselves to find where is that beautiful fragrance, beautiful friend, beautiful dearmost love. So, yeah.
And that kind of leads us to the next question about this was a question from Path of Cinnamon, and she was inquiring about what is the name of your friend's book about Radha and Krishna and this dance of intimacy and the feminine. So let's talk a little bit about, maybe you could talk a little bit about Bhakti Shakti and share kind of how that also points us in the direction of quenching our thirst.
Well, this is a beautiful book. Were you going to share the screen to show the picture of the cover? Yes. This is a beautiful book. So our dear friend, my dear god sister Pranada, who's on the call, she wrote really from her heart of hearts. She wrote a beautiful, beautiful book that explores the Bhakti Shakti. So we've heard this word Shakti. We've heard about the goddess in different ways. We've heard a lot about Goddess Durga and different goddesses of the world. But there hasn't been so much written about Srimati Radharani, who's the goddess of Bhakti. The path of Bhakti is actually an expansion. Once my guru, Srila Prabhupada, I wrote to him and asked him, well, because I saw a picture and I said, who is this goddess? And he said, this is the goddess of Bhakti, and she's an expansion of Radharani. So this beautiful book by Pranada, which I highly recommend to all of you, please get it and please study. She's studied, the different aspects of the energies of Krishna, and then the ultimate energy being this Bhakti energy. So she talks about the energies of illusion, and she talks about the other goddesses and explores the history, and then she comes to the summation talking about so many beautiful aspects of Srimati Radharani. So, and look at the cover. She's so, so, so beautiful. And I know Pranada was mentioning this. She really, really wanted that color green in the background, because the color green, Radharani has a golden complexion and Krishna has a dark bluish complexion. And the color green represents the forests of Vrindavan, or the union of Radha and Krishna in the forests of Vrindavan. So it's a very, very beautiful book, that something to share with, have for yourself as a treasure and share with your friends. Mm-hmm.
And I've posted a link here, places you can buy it. So you can buy it on Amazon, and here is the link. And if you want to buy it internationally with free shipping, here is also a link. So those are two places where you can find it. And yeah, I read it when I was visiting some friends in Colombia at the Shyam Ashram, which is a beautiful place to visit if you're looking for a trip out of the country, and just reading about the goddess and this relationship, the idea of what Bhakti Shakti is, and also what it's not. I thought Prana did such an amazing job at kind of teasing out what it is and what it isn't, so that we can come into really a deeper appreciation of Radharani and this divine feminine. So, and it's beautiful to have on your bookshelf, as you guys could see the cover. It's really like art. It's art in your home library.
Yeah. And, one aspect of Radharani's compassion that I always love to think about is how she always wants to place others forward. So to put our prayer in the hand of Radharani, then she will recommend us. So rather than going directly to Krishna or the divine masculine, we try to place our prayer into the hand of Radharani, and then she will recommend us. So this is part of the descending grace, the path of descending grace that we always want to approach through the holy sadhus and through Radharani, and ask for that recommendation. So that's a beautiful humility, I think, also on the path of bhakti.
Yeah. And as we're talking, if questions are popping up for any of you who are listening, please feel free to type them in the chat box. If you have comments you want to share, you can raise your hand, and then you can unmute yourself too. If anything's striking a chord that you want to comment on. I'm seeing some hearts pop up in corners, so that's nice to see too. Here's a question actually that just popped up from Sadhana. Thank you, Sadhana. She says, Hare Krishna, thank you for the lovely dialogue. Question, how does the knot in the heart develop, and then how to loosen? The softening of the heart is so important.
Beautiful. So yeah, that's a very, very important question. That heart is knotted by ego, by thinking that I can do it myself, that I don't need grace, that I don't need to lean into to that receptivity, that that controlling ego, that that dominating and controlling ego that's there both in men and women. So by the chanting process, by what's called swadhyaya in Sanskrit, or by studying sacred wisdom books, by all of these processes, by hearing with an open heart, with a childlike open heart, all of these processes serve to start to loosen and slacken that knot of the heart, which keeps us in this world. It's really an illusion of separateness, because the fact is we're tiny. I always like to say the satisfaction of sacred smallness. So we're tiny. Like the jiva soul, the individual soul is described as being 1/10,000th the tip of a hair. So we can't even conceive of what that means. So tiny, but yet so worthy and sacred and always connected. So when we forget that sacred connection, when we think I can do it myself, almost like, if any of you have kids, almost like a 2-year-old, I can do it myself. I don't need your help. So that's kind of the beginning of the manifestation of that dominating and controlling ego. So to think, I need your help, I need grace, and I need your compassion. So the really advanced devotees on the path of bhakti are crying for that grace and crying for that compassion and begging for it. In one place at the end of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya speaks about how his mind has become a beggar. So that beautiful thing. So this is when the mind becomes spiritual and goes into the deep heart space and starts begging for that grace. So it's very opposite of other types of yoga, actually, that are about achieving and perfecting the pose and ascending. But it's all about that descending grace, that receptivity, that receiving of grace. And so I hope that's helpful, Sadhana. All of these processes and practices of bhakti. And to always be, like Prabhupada would use a nice example that, when you put an iron in a fire, it's just a cold iron rod, right? But if you stick it in a fire, it starts to become warmer and warmer and warmer. And then if it comes out of the fire, it can itself act like fire, even though it's really just a piece of iron. So in the same way, if we stay always in Sangha, really, by hearing or by chanting or by remembering, then we can also act like fire and be contagious, giving bhakti and sharing bhakti deep in our own hearts and with others as well. So to try to keep that connectivity, I think that's very much a part of bhakti. The illusion of, Pranada really explores that in her beautiful book, that illusion of separateness, and the Maya Shakti she talks about, the illusion Shakti that we all are under when we're trying to control and dominate with that knot in the heart that is so foreign to who we really are. I hope that's helpful.
Oh, what a beautiful description. And it, kind of feeds back to that idea of we all have that God-sized hole in our heart. We're trying to fill it. And, for those of us who maybe grew up in situations where our home life was really challenging, maybe there was addiction or abuse, the idea of relying on the ego and relying on control and trying to control everything, that not becomes bigger and bigger. And, we're trying to find ways to patch it up, kind of foolhardily. Can I just patch it up a little, just kind of a little here, a little there.
Yeah.
And the path. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and our conceptions of what we hear about women's empowerment, it's all about financial empowerment, which is great. Women should be paid on a parity of what men are being paid, but the idea of just smashing that glass ceiling. So, women's spiritual empowerment is about receptivity and receiving that descending grace and deeply hearing and deeply loving and opening the core of the heart to receive empathy and compassion. That's really it's our birthright, mm-hmm. It's our own nature. But these other things have sort of like a veneer on the soul. I love the idea that on the path of bhakti, that everything actually in this world and beyond this world is Brahman. Everything, in fact, is spirit. But it takes on this material, illusory covering when we try to dominate it and try to enjoy it separately as though it's mine. So then the spiritual takes on this material quality, which is illusion, because in fact, everything is in fact spirit.
Mm. Mm. I love that. Yeah. Sadhana, does that answer your question before we move on?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, thanks.
So maybe we'll go to another question. We'll go down to talk 4, which was beauty and truth in bhakti. Mm-hmm. And Isis Moon said, "Thank you both. Loved the contemplation on beauty and truth. So I've been thinking about unrequited love, the longing, and have come to my own understanding to enjoy, celebrate the loving feelings and not to desire an outcome. I would be interested if you have any heart wisdom teachings on this subject. Thank you."
What a beautiful question. Yeah. So, I always think of this poet, John Keats, who said, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." And, I always question that. Is it really? Is this ephemeral beauty? Is it forever? And how is it forever? How does it become forever? Or is that just a lie, really? So I think the process of bhakti, to me, brings truth and beauty together. Because when we take the ephemeral, something like a flower that will be, fading in a matter of moments, when we take that and offer it to divinity, then it becomes like what they would say in the church is holy sacrament, or what we would say as sacred prasadam. So by uplifting the beauty and the things of the world as an offering from our hearts, they regain their original spiritual quality. Or like pausing, Krishna says this in the Gita, that, that he's the taste of water, that he's the light of the sun and moon, that he's the ability in all people. So when we pause to recognize, and then just like, this is called Anjali, when you put your 2 hands together and offer something. So when we can pause and offer those moments in the moment, then it takes on that divine quality. And to me, that becomes truth and beauty. Yeah. And the illusion of my seeing that it belongs to me and it's all about me, that's what's material. So here's a flower, see it and appreciate it, its beauty, and offer it back to its source. It becomes eternal. Yeah. So, yeah.
And I think, when we think of unrequited love and trying not to expect things from other people, it's like that it's like holding a flower. It's like, we don't expect the flower to be with us forever, or to, be different, different than it is, to start to grow different colored petals than what it is designed to grow. And so, this idea of just really appreciating and offering it and seeing it as from the source, just as I'm looking at her question, I'm just thinking, if we can get so caught up in expecting things and anticipating things, and that can create so much heartache.
Yeah. And, it's so interesting when you think that all the love songs of the world and so much of the poetry of the world, I just met a new friend. She was a country Western singer, and she was asking about the music and, the longing in the music. And it is deeply spiritual, because that unrequited love is, that's our journey in this world. That, and the most beautiful songs that move our hearts so deeply are really about that longing. And on the path of bhakti, there is this longing. I think it's a beginning when bhakti begins to awaken in the heart. So we were talking about thirst a little earlier. Sometimes I don't realize, like you were saying, that when we're dehydrated, we don't realize that we're thirsty. And that was so stunning to me, that maybe when I'm still kind of not really beginning the spiritual path, I'm not realizing that I'm famished and I'm thirsty for that love that will fill my heart. So that unrequited love, it's part of this world. And it's not as though there is no love in this world, but I believe we have to bring in that sacred secret lover. In material relationships, the most disastrous thing is when there's a love triangle, when someone kind of makes a wedge between you and the person you're trying to love. But I believe, because we always hear that this world is a reflection of the spiritual world, right? Like the tree reflected on the bank of water. Bhagavad Gita talks about that. So this idea of a love triangle spiritually is when I'm loving my kids, or I'm loving my husband, or I'm loving, my home, or my garden, or my, whatever it is I'm loving. But I bring in that sacred beloved. I bring in that third triangular partner, and it takes on that sacred quality, and then it becomes requited love, because it's taking on that sacred aspect. Because the fact is, everything in this world, she will leave, he will leave, something will happen, and I was sharing with Ashley recently that it said that joy is the gift of love, and grief is the price of love. So in this world, our love will one day have to be lost or unrequited, or someone leaves, someone passes away. But there is that one person who's been sitting in my heart, even though I keep turning my back on him through so many lifetimes. He's there through so many bodies, through so many travels. And even though I just keep ignoring that sacred beloved person is there. So it's a question of turning around and facing that love that's always been there for me, and trying to reciprocate through offering back, right? Offering back whatever my gifts are, offering back whatever my bounty is in my little life, And then that relationship begins to ignite and rekindle in meaningful ways, little by little, gradually.
I love that. And can I share a little story about the love triangle?
Yes, please.
So, and this actually kind of ties into Andrea's question about how you and I met, Rukmini. So I'll give a little backstory, and I'll tie in my love triangle story. So Rukmini and I, my husband was actually who introduced me to Rukmini's work. He was in Calcutta. He's an astrologer and was teaching at an astrology conference. And he was going to teach there and then meet up with some devotee friends and go to Vrindavan and Mayapur. And but when he was in Calcutta, he heard Rukmini speak, and he came home, and the first thing he said, he was like, I met someone. You have to meet her. She is amazing. I don't know. I only have her name, but she'll have to, And so, I had her name on a bookmark, and I kept it for, it was probably like 8 or 9 months. And then my bhakti practice started deep. My husband kind of introduced me to bhakti. So I was kind of watching him cautiously, like, let me just see how he does with this. I'm not so sure. But as I saw his heart softening and all of these things changing, I was like, okay, there's something here about this. So then I started following the breadcrumbs, and I realized she was in the DC area. And then we connected only virtually, because then it was the middle of COVID. But I joined her Patreon community and started attending the Krishna book classes. And then things kind of evolved and sparked from there. But the love triangle story was that early on, when my husband started getting into bhakti, I remember one day he said to me, we were having a conversation. He was like, I just have to say that I'll always love God first. And God is always going to be first. And I was so angry. I was like, what? I should be first. He's like, no, he's like, in spiritual life, God has to be number. I have to put my practices. Like, I know you don't like me waking up this early. And I was like, I didn't understand. And I was just so concerned, right. About this. And then as time went on, and as I started, chanting rounds and listening to kirtan and reading and being in good association with other practitioners, I started realizing, oh, of course, if God is not, like, how selfish and silly of me to think that my husband should put me at number one. And then where would God go? I mean, it's embarrassing to look back at, but that love triangle, to me, it didn't make sense. But now, we both have God at the top, and then our relationship grows, but it also grows because we have secret love affairs with Krishna. Like, we each have our own Krishna that we have secret little, midnight meetings and snacks with, and so in some ways that also keeps our love life a little bit more connected and vibrant too. So
So in the ultimate sense, you have an open marriage.
That's right. I would have never admitted that before, but in this case, yes.
That's really sweet. Yeah, that's really sweet. I've been thinking of the same thing. My oldest granddaughter is going to be going away to college, and her younger sister is just like her shadow self. And, they sing together, they sing harmony, and they sing with their father, Gauravani, and her younger sister is just going to be missing her so much. So I was just thinking of how to mention this to the younger sister, to Kairava, that because Revati chants 1 round of japa every day. She's the older sister. And I was thinking of how Prabhupada said that when we're chanting, we're all packed up together. In like a union, of like a community, like a beloved community. I love that phrase from Martin Luther King Jr. So I was thinking of saying to her, if you also chant a round of japa, then even though Revatis are away at college, you're going to be packed up tight with her and packed up tight in that connection of love. So
it's beautiful. Oh, I love that. Oh.
So as we have our secret lover, our secret tryst in our hearts, we have to think of how to couch that and how to share that in appropriate ways that can be heard by the different people in our life, because everyone's in a different place. And, our children may be in different places, and they may not be interested to hear, the whole 9 yards of what we're up to. But if it can be put in an ambrosial drink in little tiny, tiny drops of ambrosia, then the heart can be softened and attracted in appropriate ways. So
beautiful. Yeah, I'm going to bookmark that idea of the chanting for my girls as they're only 6 and 3, but one day that will be them too. So we have another question. Thank you, Michelle. Michelle says, "Hi, Krishna, Rukmini. I have a question in regards to a topic in a previous conversation both you and Ashley had in regards to the importance of keeping a clean home space to assist us in connecting our heart and truth in bhakti. Would you mind maybe elaborating on why this is important to our spiritual development within bhakti?" Sorry if this seems an odd question. Thank you.
No, it's a beautiful question, Michelle. Actually, Michelle is so deep, and all of your questions are always, and all of your thoughts that you share are always deep and profound. So the first thing that comes up for me in hearing your question is a beautiful pastime of Lord Chaitanya when he was in Puri, and before the Ratha Yatra, he would gather all of his devotees together, and they would clean this Gundicha Mandir, this Gundicha temple, which is the place where Jagannath, the deity of Jagannath, goes after the Ratha Yatra procession. He stays there for a few days, and then he goes back to his other temple. And that Gundicha temple represents Vrindavan. So it's a complete metaphor of cleaning the heart. So yeah, if I'm tolerating a kind of dirty, dusty home, then I'm also perhaps ignoring the dirt within my own heart. So we have to, because the heart is meant to be Vrindavan. The heart is meant to be a sacred place for Radha and Krishna to place their lotus feet, or if we can imagine like a beautiful lake with lotuses. So we want our heart to be a sacred, clean place. And how can we live in hypocrisy or duplicity if speaking to myself here now too, I have to, when I see that dirt in my heart, I have to try to weed it out. When I see that dirt in my house, I have to try to weed it out. Those are weeds, right? So, what's your cleaning schedule? Well, when you see it, just address it and get it out. So I think it's important. Yeah. And it's funny. I have a very dear friend and mentor, Krishna Chatraswami. He's an American. He's a scholar. He has his PhD from Oxford University. He first came to the temple in Germany when he had a job in Germany working for a summer. And he first came to the temple and he met Sachinandan Swami, who was talking about cleaning. He was cleaning the temple, but talking about this metaphor of cleaning the heart, and in such an ardent way about how the heart needs to be cleaned and the temple of the heart needs to be cleaned. So the temple needs to be cleaned. And this whole image, this whole metaphor convinced this Krishna Chatra to become a devotee, that deep intention of cleaning the heart. So I think it's all intertwined and it's meant to be, we shouldn't have a dichotomy between the inner and outer world, and it's not easy, but we can try our best and offer up our lackings and our inadequacies and say, Krishna, please help me, please forgive me, and try our best. I hope that helps.
Does that help, Michelle? And I'll just add something too. I did a talk and I'm teaching at an herb conference on creating organized spaces as an herbalist, because I think for a lot of us, and I don't know if this is women or just more the feminine creative types, where we have all these ideas and, all these little crafts and little things that we like to do. and that can create clutter. And I remember there was a feng shui workshop I did, and the woman was just this very wise Japanese woman. And she said, clutter is unmade decisions. And I was like, yes, because when I put something into a pile, it's because I don't want to deal with making a decision about it. Like that catalog, am I really going to look at that catalog and order something, or should I just recycle it? Right.
Right.
So, and in bhakti, isn't it the same? It's like we, when something comes into our path, like an opportunity, a job opportunity, it's like in that moment to say, this is not moving me in my spiritual path. This is not the fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I had a friend who had an aunt who would always say to her, whenever she was confused about something, her dear aunt would say, well, go clean out a drawer. And she would get clarity just by cleaning out that drawer. The decision would become clear. So, yeah.
Cleaning as meditation. That's like very Thich Nhat Hanh, just
yeah,
being present, doing the action, and know that all is coming, creating that space. Wonderful. That's such a good question. Because I think that's we can sometimes, sometimes I can get so wrapped up in the internal work and trying to sort out my own, failures and just like trying to work through those things and then be like, and I really have to do laundry now. So, so that's a good one. And we're coming to the end of our time together. So we do have a few more comments I can read, but I'd love if anyone has any comments or questions. Or I know, Rukmini, you love to do takeaways at the end of our times together. So if there's any questions or if there's any takeaways that you'd like to share.
To reflect something back that was important for you in our time together, what we shared. Was there anything that you'd like to share with someone else? You can reflect something back.
Angel, did you have something to share?
No, I didn't. I just I realized I had the opportunity to see Rukmini for a little bit, and so I wanted to do this.
Wonderful.
Very good. Well, it's all a deep cultivation of the heart and cherishing these seeds that we've received and helping them to grow. And it's really beautiful. I think that the bhakti, the plant that grows from those seeds of bhakti is a creeper. It leans in. So bhakti is all about leaning in. It's not like an upright tree that stands on its own. Krishna is the tree of life, and Radharani is that beautiful creeper that winds around that tree of life. And her devotees, we're aspiring to be, are like the flowers and the leaves and the flowers on that creeper. And what happens is when that bhakti creeper grows and grows, it begins to pierce through the covering of the material universe and reaches the lotus feet of Krishna. And it grows beautiful, delicious, succulent fruits called rasa, which is our very own relationship waiting to be discovered of, whether we're a lover of Krishna's or a friend of Krishna's or a parent of Krishna's or in some kind of service mood. So, this beautiful leaning in of bhakti is, I think, a very important takeaway. Anybody else have any thoughts? Leaning in, leaning out?
Let's see. I see Andrea. She says, my big takeaway is the importance of Sangha. I so appreciate both of your beautiful hearts. Oh, and we appreciate you too, Andrea.
Andrea is, she's touching the future, as they say, by reaching out to so many little ones and giving them a sweet taste of bhakti, which is a deep, what's called sanskar, a groove in their hearts that they'll carry with them through their whole lives. So how important is that? Yeah. Oh, Sri Manjari is here. Wow. All the way from Germany. How beautiful.
Wow. And Sri Manjari is a gardener too. So we
have something to say about gardening, Sri Manjari? Can you tell us about gardening the internal forest, wilderness, or becoming garden of the heart? Anything you can share?
I'm just I feel very blessed to hear from you, Rukmini Mataji, and to this beautiful conversation. Is just to hear about this topic. I just feel like it is just like everything becomes refreshed. It's like every day, like practicing bhakti yoga and chanting is like we can easily miss out the purpose. So I really feel like, wow, like I was just thinking about this, taking out the weed, and as soon as I see, it's funny here, it's quite late in the evening and there is always something to clean before going to sleep. And I was like, maybe tomorrow, and it just feels this like, okay, it's like the same thing with with chanting in my heart. I can see some weed and then I can be tired and be like, oh, maybe maybe tomorrow I will try to get rid of it, or understand more about it. But it's like, yeah, ultimately is yeah, it's understanding like really deeply, like where am I at, and how can I step a little bit deeper into also self-compassion and be like, okay, take the humble position and be like, okay, I there is a lot to clean still in my heart and in my environment, but still I have faith that and then I hear this beautiful conversation that I didn't expect. I just saw last minute and I was like, even if it's late, I'm like, I felt so much the call to join in, and so I'm so grateful.
Wow, grateful for you being here so late at night. That's amazing. Yeah, I always had a big question: who cleans the heart? Is it Krishna who cleans the heart, or do we clean the heart? So, but I think he takes on the heavy lifting if he sees that that's what we want, and we beg and cry to him to please, I don't want this anartha or this obstacle in my heart. Please help me. So then we can be partners in cleaning up the internal heart garden. Thank you. So beautiful to hear your voice, Shri Manjari, my dear friend.
And we have a few more reflections I'll share, and then I think we'll close for the day. So Sadhana says, my takeaway, really working inside out and not getting caught up by external world, which can drag us around without ever knowing our own selves.
So deeply introspective. Thank you so much. Getting dragged around by the externals, by the illusions, by the fake news, right?
Mm-hmm. The Maya Shakti.
Maya Shakti, the Shakti that we're trying to transcend by approaching the Bhakti Shakti of Srimati Radharani.
And then Seva Daljit Kaur says, such a beautiful talk. So much resonated with me tonight. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Seva. So thank you all so much for joining in, for participating, for just being part of the Sangha. And Rukmini and I are excited to announce we're going to continue these talks. So we'll continue to record conversations about nature and about bhakti and the divine feminine and plants and gardens and all the other things that we both really find so deeply connecting to our practice. So we hope that you'll continue to follow us and listen, and we hope that it's helpful to you. And if it's not, let us know what we can do and what topics might be of better use. And we'll continue to do this practice.
Thank you. And I should mention also, if you're interested, please join my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Rukmini Walker, if you're interested. And thank you so much, Ashley. This was such a delight. And taste of ambrosia.
Absolutely. And yes, please do support Rukmini. It's a wonderful way. You can choose any amount, and then you get hooked into the Sangha, and you can meet with a number of different platforms. She'll always send you updates of where she's going to be talking, and you'll have access to things and poems and ruminations. So, and Andrea just posted the Patreon link. Thank you, Andrea. So that's a really great way to also stay connected and to support Mataji, because she is a pure devotee. This is her service, and all that we can do to feed her well is also so important.
I have a lot of dirt in my heart, but I'm trying to be determined to see it and beg Krishna to help me clean it.
Well, I am in trouble in your presence, and I'm so grateful to have your association.
Thank you all for being here. This was wonderful. My great joy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rukmini. Take care, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.